Hello listeners, we are your co-hosts Janine Bailey and Marie Quigley for the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast.
Empower World brings guests who are making a difference to the world to inspire coaches and leaders who lead with mind, heart and soul.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. And today I am without my wonderful business partner, Marie Quigley, my partner. But today I am joined by the wonderful Christina Zini, all the way from the States. And Christina and we are going to be talking about leadership. We're going to be covering, what the modern day leader who is now required to inspire, engage, really bring people along on the journey. How can they really leverage coaching skills to be able to do that wonderful and important visionary role of leadership? So, Christina, I want to hand over to you because I'm so pleased we're doing this together because we've been talking about this for some time. And Christina and I have known each other for many, many years, way back in my Qatar Doha days when I was there full time. And I got the pleasure of meeting Christina. And so we've been staying in touch for all of that time, which again, I'm so pleased that we're here, Christina. So over to you to introduce yourself and welcome, big welcome.
Thank you, Janine. It's absolutely a pleasure and an honor to take part in your podcast. And of course, so many fond memories from when we first met in Doha, Qatar. And you are, in fact, one of my first inspirations for moving into the field of coaching. So it's been a pleasure to have known you for, about 15 years now, I think, from, the early days of my own, sort of interest in coaching and then benefiting from your mentor coaching and supervision over the years. So again, thank you. I'm Christina Zini. I'm a leadership and executive coach. I specialize in working with women leaders. It's really my passion is to develop and empower other women around me. And that stems from, my own career. I actually started my career in management consulting with PricewaterhouseCoopers, aka PwC. And then I became an IBMer. And I continued my consulting career, which took me really all over the world. I moved into HR and I specialized in developing other consultants. And that's where I started to get into career coaching and leadership development. And eventually ended up in Qatar. But that was also the time when I decided to make a break, right? And leave the corporate world behind, follow my passion for developing women. So that's when I became a certified coach and what I've been doing ever since for about 12 years now. And I just really enjoy working with leaders, both in part because of my own leadership path and journey and all the things that I learned both in consulting and in HR. And also because, I'm just a real firm believer that the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow are the ones that can really make a difference in our world. And bring us all to, just a brighter and better future together. And that requires the leaders of today to show up a bit differently than leaders have done so in the past.
Wow, what a beautiful introduction. And thank you so much for your very kind and generous words. And again, it's such a privilege for me too, to be able to, partner and still be able to have this wonderful connection that we have, Christina. And, I think it was around 2008 when I perhaps met you, maybe earlier, in Doha. And the way that I met you was, again, through your leadership of starting the Qatar Professional Women's Network, the QPWN, is that it? And bringing, again, a wonderful, amazing group of women, as you do, together to create this bond, this network, which had the purpose of being able to support other women through coaching and mentoring. So a great tribute to you that it's still going. It's still, you've left a legacy there. And I know that there've been some other wonderful women who have followed in your footsteps, running and leading that network. So congratulations again for the beautiful work that you've been doing, not only there, but no doubt everywhere else across the world. So Christina, and I know leadership and coaching is really, really important to you. There's a real passion about this type of work. So can you say more about why this is so important to you, why it means so much?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for mentioning QPW, and that network, of course, is very near and dear to my heart. It's been going for over 14 years now and has had 14 mentoring cohorts as well. So indeed something that I'm really proud of, and I just feel very grateful for all the women who have continued to keep it going, over the years. And indeed, it's making such an impact to the women in the region who oftentimes go back to their own home countries and just kind of pay it forward, right? Keep the love spreading and that vision alive. But back to your question, I think that the reason why I feel so passionate about leadership stems from my own childhood. And that might sound a little bit strange, but I was this young girl with big dreams and a real desire to put myself out there. And probably what seemed like for the kids around me in a different way, and not your typical kid, but somebody who was really I was interested in being on stage, and I was more outspoken, and I was opinionated, and again I had this self-initiative. So I was already at a very young age demonstrating a lot of these leadership qualities, but I'm certain at the time my parents and teachers and other adults around me just weren't quite sure what to do with a kid like me. But thankfully, I had enough support from parents and teachers that enabled me to really grow and develop as a young leader, and to find those outlets where I could, just nurture my raw talents. I was involved in competitive public speaking and theater, and got involved in some grassroots sort of activism at a young age. So there was a lot of ways in which, as a young girl, I was really fueling that fire that was burning inside of me. And that fire has continued to burn, to the point that I am now in my middle age as an adult mom and in a different stage and season of life, of course. I really believe that we all have that fire inside of all of us, that every single one of us has a leader within. And so it really comes back to, my desire to see that fire in everyone I meet, right? In all of my clients, but also in my own children and in their friends and in the people that I meet in my community, is really being able to see and recognize the leader within all of us. And so the way in which that I work with my clients, as I said, many of whom are women, is to ignite that leader within and find the ways that we can really help them connect with their own truth, with their strengths, with their passions, with their just natural talents and interests, and really help to fuel that fire and ignite it so that the world can see it and they can lead from, that really sort of genuine, authentic, passionate, empowered place.
Yes, beautiful. And again, I can hear the passion and the desire to support people, to bring out their best, to bring out their authentic self that perhaps has been hidden because of all of that programming that we receive as children and as we grow up about what we can and can't do. And it's interesting to hear your story as well, Christina, because my story is quite opposite to that. I was a very, very shy child. And so I really kept my voice in and hid from the world. But I still had this burning passion to make a difference in people's lives. I knew that was there from a very early age, and it was burning and burning within for a very long time until I realized, need to shed that shy girl and bring out the Leo within, the natural born leader to come to fruition. So it's wonderful to hear that you had that support around you as a young child, because quite easily that could have been squashed, all of that energy and that desire to be your natural self. So it's wonderful that you had that support. So with that, what are your thoughts, Christina, about how leaders can leverage coaching to support them to be that inspirer, that influencer, that leader that engages? It's a big question, I recognize. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a juicy question, and I think I'll break it down into two parts here. One is just the absolute importance of leaders having a coach themselves, right? And of course, this is the type of work that you and I do, and many of you listening to the podcast do as well. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is for the leaders to have their own coach that is that, creative thinking partner that can really help them develop greater self-awareness, that can help them work through those stories, those narratives, those limiting beliefs, the negative self-talk, like that we all have, right? A lot of it is indeed programming that maybe we've grown up with, or that we feel like, we have to be a certain way because of the environment that we're in right now. Whatever it is, that's a great space, to explore with a professional coach and to be able to really leverage like that unique relationships that leaders have with their coach, to just deconstruct that and peel apart the way that really don't serve the individual leader so that they can truly show up, as their whole selves, like, with that, indeed, that fire burning inside of them. Again, and I mean this in a very sort of healthy, positive kind of way, really so that they can just be the best, most authentic leader that they can be, and rid of, the things that are holding them back or not serving them, getting in their way, and so forth. So that's kind of like one component of it, the absolute significance of having a brave leader having a coach themselves. And then I think the second part of that, if we just flip it around, is really about how a leader can use coaching skills. So I often think about the leader of today being a visionary leader. Like these are the kind of leaders that we need right now, today, and tomorrow to lead us into the future, right? To be those like innovative thinkers, those visionaries who are leading us, through rapid change, much of which, as we know, is very driven by technology, and all the breakthroughs that we're experiencing around AI, for example, but also leaders that can navigate us through turbulent times, as we see with climate change and political unrest, you name it, pandemic, right? There's so much going on. And so the leaders of today and tomorrow really have to draw from a very different set of skills than the leaders of the past did. And I think you and I will probably agree that, previously this sort of like command and control style of leadership was like the sort of dominant way of showing up as a leader. And that's still, evident. And of course, it's more evident in certain types of organizational systems and structures like the military or paramilitary for that matter. But even those leaders are showing up differently than they used to, right? And when we're talking about, leaders of organizations, be it nonprofit or for-profit or educational institutions, public health, hospital systems, we're talking about leaders, again, who are really having to draw upon, really being able to inspire the people around them towards a vision, where they're heading in the future and what the goals are associated in support of that future vision. And so that requires a leader to not only inspire, but also influence the people around them, to show up in a certain way or to change their behavior or to embrace certain values, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, and so forth. And this is where I think coaching can be an amazing instrument in getting people to not only, really engage with that vision and feel inspired by that vision, but also sort of adapt their own beliefs, their own behaviors, in line and in support of that vision that the leader is, basically like drawing everyone towards. And so when a leader shows up, with that coaching mindset, that's really about keeping an open, curious mind and being able to ask questions that help engage the people around them, that draw them in, that help the people around them really become part of the solution, even part of like the definition of what the vision is, and then the definition of how to get there, what needs to be put in place to get there. It really helps them feel invested in that change and the direction that they're all headed. And then they, in turn, the people who are, directly reporting to leadership can go and do the same, right? Creates like this ripple effect. So when we are incorporating that coach approach of rather than telling people what to do, but sort of inviting them into the conversation, inspiring them by including them in the envisioning, inviting them in to think about what is, the way in which we move towards that vision. And then really, again, playing on their strengths and what they're bringing to the table, being able to really tap into like that fire that you see inside each and every individual person. That is what I think is such a differentiator in, the modern leader, is being able to leverage those coaching skills in a way that inspires and influences the people around them, and does so, again, like by invitation, right? By inviting people in.
Yes, it's so powerful if an organization can find someone, a leader like that, to lead them through, as you say, the navigating through all of the challenges that are so much out there at the moment. And there always have been, but it does feel like there's this more and more, as the globe gets smaller, challenges seem to be getting bigger. I could be making that up. But having leaders like that in place who can engage, inspire, bring people along on the journey sounds so much more effective, with all of that energy moving towards an agreed and shared vision. And I'm wondering, what's been, as you've been sharing this, Christina, I'm wondering if you're aware of examples of leaders like that who are out there, who are really doing that amazing work, being a leader, but tapping into the wisdom of their system, their people, to help drive that energy forward in a way that is good for everybody involved in the system. I'm curious as to whether you're aware of, or if there's any examples that come to mind.
Yes. Well, an example that you and I both know is Dr. Brene Brown, and I know you've been through her Daring Way. I believe it was the Daring Way training, correct? And so I bring Dr. Brene Brown up because I view her as both like, a sort of a leadership expert because of her work around Dare to Lead. And, I see her as someone that I can very much learn from and a resource. And yet I also see her as someone who's really role modeling what it's like to show up with that coach approach to leadership. And I also think she does so in a way that is very authentic and transparent and humble, where she also fully admits when she gets something wrong, or she's fumbled or she's struggling a bit, and she's relying on her team. But what I love about the way that Dr. Brown shows up is that she is indeed listening, right? She's taking more of a listening kind of position, really wanting to hear from the people around her. She's asking those hard questions. She wants to engage in that rumble, as she calls it, right? And in that rumble, she knows that that's a healthy kind of rumble. That's where the goodness is. We're going to have a conversation and we're going to talk about different difficult subjects, difficult decisions. We're all going to do it together and have that conversation and hold this space, knowing that what's on the other side of this is going to be a better outcome than had she as a leader just made a decision and been this is what we're doing and everybody's going to follow suit, right? So she's just one fantastic example that I personally love. I love her work, her whole body of work, and really everything she does. I just eat it all up. And I think you do too. So I'm a little biased when I use Dr. Brene Brown as an example of a leader who really embodies this. In the business world, I can actually think of a few examples with some of the clients that I've worked with, and I won't name any names, obviously, because confidentiality is really paramount in the type of work we do. But I've seen such transformation in leaders who really focus on developing that coach approach to leadership and start to change their own style a bit, perhaps by being less domineering or directive, but take a little bit more of a listening, sit back, engage, ask the hard questions, take people aside, have a one-on-one conversation with them, take a little bit more of a personal approach, find out what's going on with the people on their team outside of work. Just really create a very human-centric, bring your whole self to work kind of culture within their team. And then showing up again with a slightly different posture of just openness and curiosity and possibility, right? That infinite mindset that, Simon Sinek talks about. And when they're in that space, I just feel like that's where there's so much more potential for innovation and creativity and high functioning teams, right? That's just this space where you can really accelerate, your performance and your results as a team or as an organization, right? When a leader's playing, in that kind of a capacity, again, versus this sort of closed command and control. I'm going to direct you and tell you what to do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing those examples. So yes, Dr. Brene Brown is a wonderful role model for this type of work. And gosh, hasn't she created an amazing, successful practice around the globe because of those leadership skills that she displays so beautifully. And, she has to have a level of dominance within her to do what she's doing. And she is able to tap into vulnerability, something we spoke about before coming onto this podcast, being able to access and tap into vulnerability, allow it to surface so that we can appreciate and understand, what's the wisdom here? What is this vulnerability? What does it want to teach me? And so she's, I think, again, a wonderful example of being able to do that, to allow herself to be vulnerable in a way that honors herself, and respects others as well. So it's not going to victim mode. It is really, truly being able to share. Perhaps I don't know the answer, or perhaps I got this wrong. So so much more. It's another topic. And thank you for sharing your client examples as well. And of course, appreciate it needs to be confidential. So it's wonderful to hear that you're doing that powerful work that we know will have this beautiful ripple effect into personal and professional lives. So, Christina, as we start to wrap up now, and I've really appreciated this conversation and would love to dive into it even more, I'm wondering what it is that you might like to share with our listeners that will be important to potentially ask a question of themselves or to do some deeper reflection. Because our listeners are potentially coaches who already coach, or they may be leaders who coach, or perhaps they're neither, and perhaps are interested in what you've had to share. What might you like to say to them as we start to wrap up?
That's a great question to me. What's coming up for me is, again, just that fire that I believe is inside of us. So the question that I would ask your listeners, regardless whether they're a coach or a leader who wants to use a coach approach or none of the above, is really just tuning in and listening to that inner voice and connecting with that little flame that's inside of all of us. Just really connecting with that flame, listening to what that fire burning inside of you is telling you. What sort of leader do you want to be? What sort of leader do you know you were meant to be? How do you want to show up differently? What is it that you want to let go of and leave behind that's no longer serving you? How do you want to let the world see that light that only you can shine? Thank you.
Thank you. Great, beautiful questions for our listeners to take away. And it is really important to understand, I believe, who we want to be, how we want to show up. So, yeah, thank you for asking our listeners to reflect on those, again, powerful questions. Christina, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast, and I hope you can come back someday soon and we can do that deeper dive into the vulnerability piece as well around leadership and so much more. So thank you. Thank you. So listeners, if you have feedback, please do let us know in potentially the comments below, or send your feedback to support@empower-world.com. Any suggestions for future podcasts, also most welcome. And we really appreciate you listening to our wise and wonderful leader today, Christina Zini. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Janine.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about us
on our website, www.empower-world.com, and on our social media networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Be empowered.